Committee meeting. This Wednesday, the 8th of October. I am Councillor Neil Sanderson, Chairman of the Committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, when asked to speak, please use the push button and talk through the microphone. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction and allow everyone to hear you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read the following fire notice. There is no planned fire drill in the building this evening. If a fire alarm does sound, then please could you make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate by the entrance of Caldecott Park. Should you have a disability and not be able to follow those instructions, please indicate and we will get the superintendent to assist you. Second item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
Minutes of the last meeting.
Oh, sorry, minutes of the last meeting. Our members contend that that's a true and reasonable record. Thank you. I'll sign those. Second one is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence? Oh, I hate this part.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Lawrence and Freeman, with Councillor Mystery here as a substitute.
Declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest is defined by the Councillor's Code of Conduct. A. Non-pecuniary interests. Councillor Gillies.
It's item 3 for applications for consideration, and that's planning application number R24/1166, and that is as a ward councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Thank you. Application R250360, ward councillor.
Thank you. Pecuniary interests. No. Notice under... Oh, yes. So non-pecuniary. I should say that I know Richard Alanak, who's one of the speakers tonight, but we have not at any time discussed any of the applications that are on this agenda this evening. Thank you. Notice under Section 106, Local Government Finance Act, non-payment of community charge or council tax. No, we've all paid. Right. Applications for consideration. In order that each of these items can be dealt with, the planning officer will speak first and make the presentation. Representatives for the objectors and applicants, and then the ward councillor will each be invited to speak. The planning officer can address any material issues arising from the speaker's comments and accept questions from councillors. Any ward councillor or councillor who speaks to an application as part of the public speaking process shall then leave the meeting whilst the decision is being made. The committee will then go into debate on the application, asking relevant questions of the planning officer. If necessary, a formal recommendation will be made and voted upon. Again, in terms of speakers, all speakers will have 3 minutes, no more and no less. They will be warned with a short alarm when they have 90 seconds left, and then further alarm will sound when their time has expired. This presentation should then be brought to a halt. All speakers should direct their presentations To amplify the planning matters they have previously put forward to the benefit of the committee, speakers should restrict their comments to material planning considerations. Speakers should not introduce any additional information that has not been previously brought to the planning committee's attention. No visual aids or handouts can be used. Thank you. Okay, members, can we bring your attention to R250360?
Do you need to explain them, don't you?
Yeah.
In reverse order.
We're actually doing them in reverse order, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is item 4, which is R250360. Right. Can I ask John Foster to make a presentation?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to land at Windmill Farm, which is located on Northampton Lane in Dunchurch. The application is for a new electricity substation, including transformers, the creation of a temporary access to this via the Homestead Link Road, and associated fencing, landscaping and drainage. This shows the site plan. The main substation compound will be in this area here. This is where there's going to be a drainage run connecting up to an existing ditch. And this area is the line of the previously approved Homestead Link Road, which is included because planning application boundaries need to include the land to access the site from the highway. These are the site photographs. These are looking towards residential properties that you can see on Corston Lane. And then this fencing here is the line of the Homestead Link Road, which has been fenced off on the site. As you can see, this is currently an arable field. The proposed plans show the proposed development. This is the line of the previously approved Homestead Link Road. There's going to be an access into the site, which at this stage will be a cul-de-sac access. This does form part of Homes England's wider proposals, but the current application is for this as a small temporary access. There's turning facilities within the site, and then this is the compound. This is a zoomed-in plan of the compound. There's a switch house building in the centre with transformers either side, which are enclosed within a fence. This is then enclosed within a further security fence, and then the whole gravel compound area is enclosed by a low timber fence. These are the elevations which show the 3 different levels of the fencing, the building and the transformers, which you can also see here from the side elevation. And then this shows the proposals without the fences to obscure the view. The key issues to assess in relation to the application are the principle of the development, biodiversity, including the impact on the wildlife corridor, landscaping and visual amenity. In terms of the principle, the site falls within the South West Rugby allocation, as indicated there. The substation is required to support the development of South West Rugby, which is in accordance with the local plan and the South West Rugby SPD. The overall principle of the development is therefore considered acceptable. In relation to biodiversity, a preliminary ecological appraisal was submitted with the application. This set out that the application site is an arable field and the proposals are unlikely to impact on any protected habitats or species. And conditions were recommended for a construction environmental management plan and a lighting scheme to be agreed to minimise the impact on any nesting birds or bats in the area. In terms of biodiversity net gain, the existing habitats on site comprise 1.1 area units and 0.04 hedgerow units. The proposed landscaping scheme, which is indicated here, will result in 1.34 area units and 0.69 hedgerow units. These are increases of around 22 and over 1,500%, which exceeds the requirement for 10% biodiversity gain. This will be secured by the deemed condition and a habitat management and monitoring plan. In terms of the wildlife corridor, objections have been received on this basis, and policies in the SPD and the design code require the provision of a continuous green and blue infrastructure corridor linking to adjacent networks, specifically between Corston Spinney and Cock Robin Wood. So this is an extract of the SPD with the site indicated here. Cock Robin Wood is over here to the east, and the edge of Corston Spinney is up here to the west, and this shows the wildlife corridor area. The SPD sets out that the details of the wildlife corridor will be a matter for development design. The application site is immediately adjacent to the Homestead Link Road, which I've previously mentioned, and this includes a landscape and open space buffer. This is to the south of the road here, and then further along moves over to the western side of the road when the road curves around the corner. These plans include a wildlife corridor under the road and then woodland planting around the substation. So this woodland planting, which has previously been approved, is 15 metres wide in this position and around 10 metres wide at this position. The proposals include landscaping with trees and hedgerows. So you can see the hedgerow around the substation here and along the northern boundary, and then trees here and here. These will provide connections to this Homestead Link landscaping and allow connections to be made further north. This will provide wildlife connections and will increase the planting and connectivity than the existing arable field. And there have been no objections from the county ecologist on this basis. In terms of landscaping, the proposals do not result in the loss of any trees or hedgerows. The landscaping scheme includes trees, hedgerows, bulb planting and meadow grass, including flowers. The proposed scheme was revised during the course of the application to include additional planting to the site frontage and the northwestern boundary, and revised species were proposed to address comments received from the Tree and Landscape Officer. In relation to these amended landscape plans, there was no objection from the Tree and Landscape Officer. In terms of visual amenity, the building and transformers will be a maximum of 5 metres high. They are set well back from the site boundaries and will be enclosed by fencing and landscaping. Palisade fencing is proposed around the transformers, and then revised plans were providing a paladin mesh fence outside of this. The materials of the building and the fencing are to be agreed by a condition. Although it's currently a field, the substation will be seen in association with the wider South West Rugby development, and this is a plan from Homes England's master plan application, which shows the site in relation to the Homestead Link and landscape buffer and the proposed school and residential development, so it will not be an isolated feature. The impact on visual amenity is therefore considered acceptable. As detailed in the report, the development is considered acceptable in relation to highways and transport, public rights of way, air quality, noise and vibration, drainage and sustainable design. It's considered that the proposals comply with the development plan and no material considerations have been identified to indicate it should not be approved, and it is in accordance with the local plan and the MPPF. The proposals will also support the development of the South West Rugby allocation, which will allow the delivery of homes, schools and other community facilities. It will lead to investment in construction in terms of jobs and materials and future spending within the area. The proposals include the landscaping scheme and biodiversity enhancements, and these factors carry weight in favour of the proposals. It's therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and informatives as set out in the draft decision, with the Chief Officer to be given delegated authority to make minor amendments to conditions and informatives as outlined in the draft decision notice. Thank you, Chair.
And can I ask the speakers to stand by? I'll call Mr. Richard Allenack.
Thank you, Chair. Our borough has planning policies both for biodiversity net gain and for connectivity between habitats. Both are necessary to secure our natural history. At paragraph 3.7 of her report, the Chief Planning Officer confirms that both policies DS8 and NE2 are apply to this site. Councillors voted for DS8 in 2019, and they required that in any development of South West Rugby, Corston Spinney and Cock Robin Wood must be connected by a wildlife corridor. In paragraph 612, the CPO confirms that the wildlife corridor is scheduled to pass through this site. In 2024, you approved the Homestead Link. As the CPO's paragraphs 613 and 614 confirm, those landscape plans showed a 10-metre wide woodland belt. They also contained Homes England's promise that this would continue through this site to connect to Corston Spinney. However, Homes England have reneged on that promise. Homes England's landscape plans for this application show that where a 10-metre wide woodland belt should stand, they will plant just 5 trees. And of these 5, only one meets your SDC2 policy of being of ecological value appropriate to the area. Your NE2 policy requires that all proposed wildlife corridors should be supported by a framework plan. HE have not provided a framework plan, they have not provided a design and access statement, and they have not provided the required statement of conformity to the SPD. HE's planning statement does not mention the DS8 wildlife corridor requirement. HE are not providing such a corridor on this site. HE can provide both a wildlife corridor and an electricity substation on this site. They choose not to do so. An alternative line for the wildlife corridor might be proposed, but HE have not provided the required framework plan for this. Their planning statement does not ask for this, and the SPD paragraph 5.2 conditions for a new line have not been met. At paragraph 617, the CPO correctly...
Thank you. Do members have any questions for the officer on that presentation? No? Thank you.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah, do you want to come back on?
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify one point, which was that the Homestead Link Road wildlife corridor... Sorry, is that working now? Okay, I'd like to just clarify one point, which is that the Homestead Link Road wildlife corridor, which is shown here, is still proposed next to the current application site, and then the landscaping proposed as part of the current application will be inside of that. It's not removing what was previously approved as part of Homestead Link Road.
Yep. Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Anna Bend and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant in support of the proposal for a new electricity substation at Windmill Farm, Dunchurch. This substation is a vital piece of infrastructure needed to unlock the South West Rugby Sustainable Urban Extension, enabling the delivery of around 3,000 homes, schools, employment and community facilities. It directly supports policy DS8 in the Rugby Borough Local Plan and aligns with the South West Rugby Master Plan SPD. The proposal has been designed to minimise environmental impact and deliver measurable biodiversity enhancements well above the statutory 10% BNG requirement. A long-term habitat management and monitoring plan will ensure these gains are sustained over 30 years. The substation's central location has been carefully chosen to balance the technical, environmental and delivery needs. It sits next to less sensitive uses such as the proposed school car park, allowing for effective screening and minimal impact on amenity and open space. Its proximity to the approved Homestead Link Road ensures early unobstructed access for construction and maintenance, avoiding disruption to future residential areas. Being close to the internal spine road network also enables efficient onward connections to development parcels, supporting phased delivery across the wider site. We acknowledge concerns about the wildlife corridor and nearby woodlands. The substation integrates with the approved landscaping scheme for the Homestead Link Road, which includes woodland planting and a wildlife crossing. The site is over 250 metres from Corston Spinney and Fox Covert, with no objections raised from the county ecologist or tree and landscape officer. Native planting will maintain ecological connectivity. In terms of design, the substation is modest in scale with a maximum height of 5 metres and will be screened by native planting. Fencing and building materials have been selected to reduce visual impact and will be agreed with the officers to complement the surrounding area. The site lies within Flood Zone 1, the area of lowest flood risk, and includes sustainable drainage. Access will be provided via the approved Homestead Link Road, with permanent access proposed from Windmill Street, the future sustainable transport link. Turning and parking arrangements are included. Once operational, the substation will generate minimal traffic, limited to occasional maintenance visits. All highway and rights-of-way matters have been addressed. In conclusion, this proposal delivers clear economic, social and environmental benefits. It is policy compliant, environmentally responsible, and is essential to unlocking the wider South West Rugby development. I respectfully ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Any technical questions they wish to raise with the officer following that presentation? Okay. Right, now we'll move into debate. Who'd like to start off? Ms Simpson-Vince.
Thank you, Chair. We know that we're going to need this here because we know getting electricity to this site is difficult. I know Tritax had to pull electricity from the town centre to get power to their site. You have a very vast site to deal with here. Homes England know that the most contentious things on this site are the wildlife, the trees, Corston Spinney, woodland corridor. So you've got a big site, and I'm sure you've explained there's lots of reasons why you've put it where you've put it, but it was just like, really? Did it have to go there? Was there nowhere else within that site that it could have just gone to save yourself all of these objections, all of these arguments, all of these discussions? When you've got a big site that's thousands of houses, it is always going to be, you're going to have objections along the way. But try and work with the communities and try and get the communities on board. I get lots of emails about trees and everything with the Homestead link, and that's not even really started. And it just seems a shame that this could have been a good opportunity to put this somewhere that you wouldn't have all of these arguments coming in and you wouldn't have all of these objections, and people would look at it and go, okay, we get there needs to be a substation. But by putting it where you've been putting it, it's just, I don't know, just despair a little bit. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have any other comments by members? Councillor Sam Edwards.
Thank you to Councillor Simpson-Vince, and I just want to sort of echo those concerns as well. I think there are concerns about the wildlife corridor. There are concerns that this is arable land which could be used for further farming. There are concerns that the scene that we're going to be looking at is going to change forever and is out of character for the area. And there's also my concerns about when we talk about it's not going to be in isolation. I mean, how close is it going to be to the school, for example, and what risks are involved in that? So there's a lot of concerns I have about this, and I'm not able to support it this evening.
Councillor Gillies.
Well, yes, it's pretty obvious, Chair. If we're going to have lots of houses, we've got to have the infrastructure to meet the needs of those homes. One or two issues come to mind is that, is the substation being fed by overhead cables or are they underground cables? Because clearly if they're overground, there's going to be a strict restriction where development can go underneath them. Okay,
My understanding from the comments they've given me on other applications is that the cables will be underground as part of the overall development.
Okay. Can I just continue? So, will that create any issues regarding development if that development was over the, I'm talking about housing development, over the top of those underground cables? Because normally there is, isn't there, on...
Because this is being designed as part of the development, the cables to feed into the substation are due to come, I think it's down Dunchurch Road, along Northampton Lane, and then to the substation. The cables coming out of the substation, they will look at as part of the wider applications, but they will look to put them within their key infrastructure, within the roads, to allow them to get to the other parts of the site without causing the problems that you're concerned about.
Councillor Ishmistry.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to just say something on this application because I know it has generated a lot of interest, and so I have really considered the supporting papers in the document. Let's start with the Southwest Rugby, a major allocation in the current local plan. I know as a council we are engaging at a high level with Homes England on a number of matters that I hope will see benefit of for residents in the future on the wider scheme. But first we have to start with what we have here, and that's a substation which is clearly needed as a part of that initial infrastructure. So on what basis can we object at this stage? In light of all the expert advice, when there is no objection from Warwickshire Ecology and the biodiversity net gain, here it is well above the 10% required, well above the 10% figure that we have just seen highlighted by the officers. Council planning policy, the supplementary planning documents and design code require a continuous green and blue infrastructure corridor between Cock Robin Wood and Coaston Spinney. Unless I'm mistaken, that is still in place. If I'm wrong, I'll ask the officer please to correct me. I understand that the landscape scheme was revised during the application to provide additional trees and hedgerow and increase in native species. Building on a green field is never a good thing and has to be balanced against all other factors, Mr. Chairman. The site is currently an arable field with low habitat value. The proposed landscaping, which includes trees, hedgerow and meadow planting and flower, is an improvement, as quite rightly highlighted by the officer. The Homestead Link woodland planting adjacent to the site is only 10 meters by 15 meters wide. This landscape scheme will provide a connection to this and allow connection north so that this fulfills the requirement of the green corridor. Mr. Chairman, I read and heard this application for a substation as described at Homes England attempt to block off the wildlife corridor between Coaston Spinney and Cock Robin Wood. This is not correct, Mr. Chairman, and this is not true. So I'll be supporting the application. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder?
I can second that, Carl.
Okay. So we have a proposition before us to approve the application as presented by the officer. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Now, can I move to application Right, we're now going to move to application R24/1166.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is my first presentation, so apologies to everybody if it's a little bit clunky, but I'll do my best. Right. Firstly, this application is being reported to Planning Committee for determination because the proposed development has been called to committee by Councillor Timms for two reasons. One, inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and two, fire risk and its potential impact on local residents given the fire service response time to this location. The application site is located approximately 800 metres north of Brinklow, and the site is located within the Greenbelt and is considered to fall within the open countryside outside of any settlement boundaries. The proposed development comprises construction, operation and decommissioning of a battery energy storage system with vehicular and internal access, landscaping, boundary treatment and associated works and infrastructure. The site is accessed, if you look at the slide there, via an existing farm access track off Smeaton Lane. This track serves agricultural and equestrian functions, as well as multiple industrial units and storage facilities. This private access track links the site to an entrance on Smeaton Road, approximately 750 metres northeast of the application site. So as you can see, it meanders through the farmyard and the associated buildings. And this here is the location of the battery energy storage system facility. So this can be seen clearer on this particular slide. To give the site a bit of context, it's relatively flat. It's surrounded by agricultural land to the west, east and south. The site has a gentle gradient sloping from south to north, gradually towards the former chicken shed, which is this building here. To the north. The site currently forms part of a larger, generally rectangular agricultural field, which is laid to grass and currently contains two copses of sapling trees. The site is bordered to the west by a boundary field hedge and to the north by that shed, measuring approximately 130 metres long by 28 metres deep. This shed is now occupied by a range of other activities. The east and north boundaries of the site adjoin open fields. As you can see here, there's an overhead power line which runs just across this tip of the application site. This would be the connection to the electricity grid system. In terms of residential property and its proximity, we have Willowbank Farm, approximately 250 metres to the east of the site. So it's just off this particular slide. And the next nearest properties are about 290 metres distance away from the site on Smeaton Lane. There are no public rights of way within the application site, although there is public right of way 136 R76A, which runs immediately to the west of the site here. There's also a bridleway which runs to the northwest of the site, connecting to a raised elevation bridge over Smite Brook. Description of the proposals. So the site measures 2.92 hectares and seeks full planning permission for a 60 megawatt battery energy storage system for a period of 40 years. The development comprises 56 battery units, and these are housed in containers, 14 battery cabinets that contain those 56 battery units. There are 14 conversion system inverters. There are 8 twin skids. There's an auxiliary transformer. There is a storage container and a similar facility which has been called a customer switchgear. There is a 132 kilovolt substation with a perimeter fence enclosure of its own. Immediately to the north of that substation, there are 2 water tanks. There is a distribution network operator control room building. Within the site, there are 10 CCTV cameras, other ancillary infrastructure, including an underground cable connection, and internal access tracks as well, which run through the site, as you can see. And these are the various different elements in terms of cabinets, in terms of inverters, containers, the CCTV units, etc. This is the DNO control room. This little building basically deals with the tech which controls this facility. So it's not in itself an office room that would be, would be manned on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, it contains, I would imagine, hard drives and other equipment, which is necessary to manage and automatically manage and maintain this facility. So we've also got a 2.4 metre high perimeter fence, areas of landscape planting. Let's see if I can get those up. We'll get up to that. Let's go back one. Yeah, so we've got landscape planting throughout, plus a suds attenuation pond as well. There's no external lighting proposed as part of this application, the reason being to minimise impact upon local wildlife. Now, the existing access track terminates adjacent to the eastern end of the former chicken shed here, just at this point. So the proposals include an extension of the track of approximately 170 metres long, and that has these 4 short spurs which connect in there into the facility within the perimeter fence. These are laid out in 3 rectangular sections, the first being the substation, and then you've got the second 2 rows of the battery unit storage units. Outside the perimeter fence is the DNO room and also the water storage facilities as well. Turning to technical consultation responses, we received no objection from National Grid Electricity, Environment Agency, Canal and River Trust, Warwickshire Fire and Rescue, Warwickshire Police, county highways, county rights of way, county flood risk authority, county archaeology, county ecology, environmental health, and RBC trees and landscape. So there are no objections to this scheme from technical consultees. We have received responses from both Brinklow Parish Council and Coombe Parish Council. Turning to Brinklow Parish first, proposed development constitutes inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and there do not appear to be any special circumstances to warrant approval. The proposed construction would damage the views from and the appreciation of Pedlar's Bridge, which is a designated heritage asset. Coombe Parish Council have advised no determination of the application should take place until a battery safety management plan has been submitted and details of the automatic fire safety detection system have been submitted. We also received a number of third-party comments. They related to noise, they related to the risk of fire, related to light pollution, flooding, traffic generation, and dust and dirt entering properties and the lack of privacy, with the belief that more heavy-duty vehicles would worsen the current situation. Also advised that there's been a vibration issue caused by traffic on that access track. There's been a request that a new access road to the application site and the industrial unit should be built, that there would be an impact on wildlife. And although this application doesn't include any details for the installation of solar panels or wind turbines that would warrant a battery storage unit in the Greenbelt, they question the justification for it. Further objection to the use of the access drive off Smeaton Lane. These matters will be dealt with as we go through the various different headings. I'll just turn to the site access first. So this photograph here shows the site access. This is from within the site looking at the existing site access. This is looking eastwards. This is looking westwards. We'll turn to the site access widening proposals later. I have some photographs here that show wide-angle long views of the site from different vantage points. It's best to use the former chicken shed here as the guide when looking at how the facility would be incorporated. This is from the south, so in part this would obscure views of that chicken shed when looking northwards. We turn to the principle of development. The site is located within the Greenbelt and is considered to constitute grey belt lands in accordance with the NPPF. The land does not strongly contribute to the Greenbelt purposes in terms of checking unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas, preventing neighbouring towns from merging, or preserving the setting and special character of historic towns. Development of grey belt land is considered appropriate in principle if it would not fundamentally undermine the purposes taken together of the remaining green belt across the area of the plan. If there is a demonstrable unmet need for the type of development proposed, if the development would be in a sustainable location, and whether the golden rule requirements for housing, that does not apply in this case, of course. Assessing paragraph 143 and 155 of the MPPF, it's determined that the proposals do comply and are considered acceptable in principle within the green belt. This would therefore be appropriate grey belt development within the green belt. Turning to agricultural lands, an assessment was submitted by the applicants along with a sequential site assessment which considered the potential for alternative sites within a search area. Now that search area, the application site itself comprises grade 3A and grade 3B lands. There is no grade 2. The assessment that was undertaken extended across a 15-kilometre length between Rugby and Coventry of the power line, 2 kilometres either side. And after assessing available sites, it was confirmed that no sequentially preferable sites more suited to accommodating the proposed development, either brownfield or greenfield, were available. Although the assessment did consider other sites which may have included best and most versatile land, case law has found it to be unreasonable to require the testing on such land outside the applicant's control. The land will revert back to agricultural use after the 40-year lifetime of the development, and the use of best and most versatile land in this case is considered acceptable and in accordance with local plan policy SDC 8. Turning to design and appearance. So the design of the proposed development has been informed by the context of the site and its surroundings. So the immediate context within the site sits is formed mostly by agricultural land and is flanked to the north by the former chicken shed, which acts as a visual buffer. So the key elements of the design are to minimise the environmental and landscape impact by preserving trees and hedgerows, maintaining suitable standoffs from sensitive ecological features, and assimilating the development into the local landscape as far as possible, with additional screening and other landscaping. Development utilises the existing access of Smeaton Lane into Bungalow Farm and would be set within an existing field pattern. All field margins and boundary vegetation will be retained. The security fencing around the site is situated inside the boundary the security fencing around the site will be situated inside the boundary vegetation to ensure that the fencing is not outwardly visible and the hedge can be accessed for maintenance. Within the perimeter fence, the layout is generally regular and utilitarian in character, with battery storage units arranged in those spaced rows. The substation and the 2 storage containers and their associated infrastructure again are typically utilitarian in character. They are sited, the storage containers are sited side by side in the vertical alignments, and taken together, the site is compact in its appearance. an effort has been made to keep the various different elements as close to one another as possible to ensure you haven't got a big spread. The most visible components of this development would be the substation apparatus. Now, that substation would involve the construction of 9 structures within the enclosure over 4.5 metres in height, inclusive of 2 structures at a height of 6.11 metres and 1 structure at a height of 6.77 metres. Although I haven't got an accurate measurement of the height of the chicken shed, which it sits adjacent to, it would appear to be in excess of 6 metres to ridge height. So it's unlikely that any of that infrastructure would be visible above that ridge line. So as I've said, the apparatus is utilitarian in character, functional in appearance, reflects its purpose for the storage of electricity, and the cabling would be underground and would have no visual impact. The DNO control room, just outside the perimeter fence, would have a gross floor area of 6.9 metres by 5.6 metres and would include a pitched roof with a ridge height of 5.57 metres. Again, this would be very much subordinate to the former chicken shed sitting next to it. So at this stage, there's been no confirmation regarding the colour of cladding, bricks, roof materials which are proposed for the structures, the apparatus and the containers, but this will be controlled by condition. As I've said previously, this is for a development which has a 40-year lifetime, as proposed by the applicant, and all infrastructure associated with this development would be removed and the land would be reinstated to its current condition. This too would be controlled by condition. Individual residential properties located to the east and south of the site, as well as to the north. However, given the distance from the site and the existing and proposed landscaping, the proposals wouldn't have an adverse impact on residential amenity. If we turn to landscape and visual impact. So firstly, the landscape officer has assessed the application and does not object to the proposals. The landscaping proposals include additional woodland, tree planting, shrubbery, hedgerow planting and grasslands. There's a woodland mix planting around the outer western end and northern perimeter of the facility to screen views. And there'll also be a landscape ecological management plan which will confirm the maintenance regime for the lifetime of the scheme. Turning to heritage, the application is accompanied by a historic environment desk-based assessment to determine the cultural heritage of the site. And it has identified the following assets to have potential to be sensitive to the development proposals. Firstly, the Grade 2-star listed Church of St John the Baptist. Also, Brinklow Conservation Area. And finally, Pedlar's Bridge, which has been referenced by Brinklow Parish Council. Pardon? Yeah. I have to go back to that. So the county has advised that, county archaeology has advised that the development will not harm significance or special interest of those 3 assets. And it's been recommended that further archaeological work be undertaken, which would be subject to a condition. In heritage terms, the scheme is considered to be acceptable subject to condition. Need to go back one. On natural environments, the ecological appraisal has confirmed that the site has been used by bats and birds. 10% biodiversity gain is required, and the proposed development would include a 7% loss of on-site habitat units and a 24.5% gain of hedgerow units. Proposals off-site on adjoining lands will lead to a gain of 55.31% habitat units. The biodiversity scheme is to be maintained for a period of 30 years. This will be controlled by condition and a payment of a monitoring contribution. The condition will require the submission of a habitat management monitoring plan. No objection has been received from the county ecologist subject to conditions and legal agreements.
Let me just thank you for that. I'll just see if there's any technical questions from members.
Do you want me to pick up on highways first?
You do highways first?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a bit quick on highways.
Planning balance, then go on to planning balance.
So, as said previously, the vehicular access to the site is provided from the existing bungalow farm access with Smeaton Lane via a priority T-junction, which serves the existing farm as well as industrial and commercial units. So it's already utilised by a number of large vehicles as well as HGVs. County Highway Authority has confirmed that it raises no objection to the proposals, subject to conditions relating to the widening of the site access and a number of informatives. If I just go back to the site access proposals, they're relatively modest. So it's just this change here, which is of significance. Just like to also pick up on noise and vibration. So third parties have raised concerns regarding noise impact, vibration impact and dust. Environmental Health have considered the application in relation to these matters and have raised no objection, subject to a condition requiring a construction management plan to ensure that existing properties are not affected by noise, vibration or dust. We also had concerns raised regarding fire safety. These were raised by Coomfields Parish Council. Warwickshire Fire and Safety Service have considered the proposals and have advised that they have no objection subject to the imposition of a condition which requires the applicant to submit and have approved a scheme for the provision of adequate water supplies and fire hydrants necessary for firefighting purposes at the site. Do you want to stop there?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right, members have any technical points they wish to raise. Richard. Councillor Harrington.
Just saying his microphone's still on, but I had no questions to ask actually.
Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Thank you. That was quite a comprehensive presentation. The chicken shed, former chicken shed, yes. Is it being used for anything at the moment? Okay. What are they using it for?
From what I can gather from my site inspection, out of curiosity, of automotive related activities taking place within that building. There are various different companies operating from there.
Okay, thank you, Chair. But the question just came about because if it's a former chicken shed and it's not being used, and quite a lot of what you're talking about, the landscaping, and obviously that buffers the views from the north, I think you said. So I was just curious as to if that came down because it wasn't being used, what that would do to the landscape view.
Well, thanks for answering that. It does sound like there's some permissions to be sought if it's not being used for something it should be used for. So it might be worth doing yet another site visit on that. But going back to this planning application, I know you're not the original officer. It was Georgine Isherwood that was the original officer. So I've got two questions. One is on the area of hard standing of the site, because that will have an impact. And where will the runoff water run to? And that's one part. The other is I do need to see the applicant's drawing for the entrance. That's part of the application paperwork, and we need to see the working drawing of the entrance. That's those two things. Thanks.
I'll just pick up on flood risk and drainage first. So the site is predominantly situated within flood zone 1, and all built development would be located in those areas of lowest risk of flooding. However, parts of the access route are located within flood zone 2 and 3. Now, this has been considered by the Flood Authority, and their opinion is that given the fact that this is not going to be a manned facility, they do not consider that to be an issue.
Sorry, Chair. Could I just? You just made a statement. Can I just come back on that? Because clearly you've made a statement there without the evidence. Because we know that when you put a structure up somewhere, you create an impact of floodwaters elsewhere, and we all know that water runs downhill. So where does it run into? The Smite Brook. So has that been considered?
I'll explain that now to you. So the applicant does propose a drainage sud scheme, and that comprises management of surface water runoff from the development area. So it will be drained via a herringbone drainage system and perimeter filter drains, and they will convey runoff to the suds attenuation basin. The development will also be constructed with semi-permeable surface materials which will allow water to infiltrate into the ground, where it will be captured by perforated pipework. So the platforms will be graded such that the flows are directed generally to the west, and any exceedance runoff will be captured by those perimeter filter drains. From there, the drainage is routed to the attenuation basin that will provide suitable treatment and attenuation prior to its discharge into the existing adjacent drainage ditch parallel to the western boundary, and that will discharge into Smite Brook. The land levels surrounding the platform are not going to be altered by these proposals. Therefore, the existing overflow flow routes will remain unchanged as per the pre-development hydrological conditions.
Thank you.
So the LLFA have raised no objection subject to conditions.
Okay. Now, I'm mindful that we still have speakers to go, folks. Could I ask John Reid from Brinklow Parish Council to make his comments?
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for allowing me to speak at this planning committee. I've got lots of notes here, but I'm afraid that some of them have been absolutely blown away by what you've said tonight. I wonder whether you've even seen the email or letter that must be on your files from the Warwickshire Fire and Rescue, when they're asking for all sorts of things that you haven't mentioned, including, very importantly, a second access route. Now, they are quite clear that they will not attend a fire which is on this site. They have said in writing that if smoke is going up to the north, they want a southern access. How you're going to provide that, I have no idea. You very kindly take photographs of every direction except any direction towards housing in Brinklow. And we've turning the green belt into grey belt out of convenience. And I don't believe that you've got the necessary support to, in fact, to do that. Who will benefit from this scheme? It certainly won't be the power users of Brinklow, where our power is fed to our houses by overhead cables, and we frequently get outages. This is not going to have any effect over that at all, but we're going to have to put up with the visual impact, and I suspect the only person who's going to benefit from this is the landowner. It's interesting that whilst you say you've got no reaction from National Grid, it's their cables that you're going to be connecting to. I don't understand, I'm sorry. And then we'll refer back to the landowner. And Councillor Tony Gillias mentioned this along the way, but not in such terms as I will. We know the landowner from circumstances which occurred in 2017. And I'm very, very afraid that when I ask RBC's officer, Hitesh Tozar, if he still works for you, I've asked him continually to check what goes on at Bungalow Farm, because we see lots of vehicle movement, lots of vehicle storage, lots of names on Google Earth that we know nothing about. And he comes back and he says, the landowner says there are no car repairs carried out on this site. Clearly, that is not the truth. We are very concerned that if this gets accepted, that the landowner will build the battery storage centre and will use it as the start of the development of a solar panel farm stretching across our very, very considered greenbelt. Gentlemen, I'm very, very disappointed that it's come to this.
Thank you. Stuart Hammond.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. So my name is Stuart Hammond from Henry Power, and I'm speaking in support of the proposal. This application has no objections from statutory consultees who take the time to review. And also, I'd like to acknowledge the officer's professional and balanced recommendation to approve. He's an objective matter. We've heard from speakers that perhaps aren't so objective. Both Brinklow Parish Council, in their comments, if you read them, and Rugby Borough Council, through the Climate Emergency Declaration and planning policies that have been adopted, have recognised that national need for battery storage to achieve net zero. That was in Brinklow Parish Council's comments. They address and accept the need. So the question then is, if there is the need, and this need is given significant weight in both national appeals and local plan decisions because we appreciate the need to get to net zero, where does it have to go? You've seen via a visual of a 15.3 kilometre overhead line that we're connecting into. We applied a buffer of 2 kilometres north and south of that. That is a significant area. We didn't go further than that because it terminates at substations at that point. We have an agreed, so battery systems have the need to fix into capacity and connections, and there has to be that capacity. We have an agreed capacity with the National Grid electricity distribution network, which are different to the National Grid has several components. But the fact is, there is a rare opportunity here to capitalise on that capacity where it goes over the site, and this site has been considered in terms of its spatial justification, in terms of greenbelt, its flooding, so the sequential test has been passed, and also we've gone for the lowest possible agricultural land classification. So we've aligned with an MPG in that matter too. We did consider brownfield, we did consider edge of town, we have considered other less sensitive sites first. We don't come with an unjustifiable site. Hence the reason why we provided a 42-page document and looked at all of that entire area. So what we have here is, and I agree with the officer's conclusion that this land is enclosed, semi-developed and does not strongly contribute to the main purpose of the green belt. It is grey belt, and that has been brought about in recent guidance from the MPPF and applied in case law. Bungalow Farm is therefore an optimal site. It has immediate and efficient grid connection, it has suitable access from Smeaton Lane, and there's no objection from highways, and its visually contained location. Even if the chicken shed was removed, there is still proposed woodland to the north. These visual receptors, these residences, are 250, 290 metres away. So the application process has been confirmed that there's no unacceptable impact from this location. There is the need. So what about this location? There are no unacceptable impacts will arise. Every step to consultee, from highways to environmental health to fire, who are the objective matters on fire safety, have raised no objection. With regards to the conditions, they've been attached by the Fire and Rescue Service. Those conditions have to be met before this is commenced and turned on. It remains safe. I welcome further questions and thank you for the officer and for the officer's recommendation for approval.
Okay. Can I just get some clarification from the officer regarding Warwickshire Fire Brigade and their comments regarding the site? There seems to be some dispute over those.
The comments that I've set out in the report are the final comments of County Fire Service.
Do you want to just go back over?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So they've considered the development proposals and advised there is no objection, subject to the imposition of a condition which requires the applicant to submit and have approved a scheme for the provision of adequate water supplies and fire hydrants necessary for firefighting purposes at the site.
Thank you. Do members have any points they wish to raise at this point? Councillor Picker.
Yeah, I'd just like to query how the applicant is getting on with that condition 14, because I've just pulled the response from Warwickshire Fire and Rescue, and it says that it requires 1,900 litres per minute for at least 2 hours, which, based on my calculator, is 228,000 litres, which is quite a lot. I would quite like to know how that's going to be met before we approve this evening.
Again, that has to come through the officer.
Yeah, I can't personally answer that question. It's a matter that the Speaker could clarify the matter.
We don't do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, through you, Chair, obviously the Fire Authority has confirmed their approach and that they want that condition. I assume they're the technical experts. If they felt that that amount of water was not achievable, I'm assuming they wouldn't have recommended that condition.
Talking about water, so it's my experience. Is there what sort of mains out there? Because obviously, if you're transferring that amount of water, and if there is an issue there, you've got high issues of discoloration, and also low pressure and no supply for residents. So, is there going to be any infrastructure change with Severn Trent to make sure they get this amount of water through? Because that's the only way you're going to get it through. I mean, I don't know the mains around there. Unfortunately, I haven't worked there for 3.5, 4 years. But it'd be interesting to see how we can actually do that. So has Severn Trent been involved? Because if there is an issue there, they'll be taking a lot of water from the mains, and if that's going to cause any issues anywhere else, then also we need to know that.
There are a number of drainage conditions. the matter that you've raised is not one that's been prompted by the Drainage Authority.
Thank you. Can I advise the applicant that the rules on planning committees were changed by the government and we don't take comments from the floor?
Apologies, I thought the questions may come my way. That was the reason why I had my hand up, and this member did too, so understood. Thank you very much. So no questions, understood.
Yes, Simpson Vince.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to get this clear. So the fire service have said what their requirement is for water. You said it will get conditioned. Do we know if the fire service, I'm not sure that the fire service necessarily talk to Severn Trent before any applications go through. So they're going to say what they need. But Severn Trent aren't necessarily going to know that's what's required or provide. They're going to look at this application on the face of it of what you've sent through and say, that's fine, but they won't necessarily know that the fire service have come back and said, this is what we need, because that won't have been in the initial application. So are we going to find ourselves in the applicant going to find themselves with quite a problem here of where we go? We just know with rural communities, Severn Trent and water is an issue, and that is quite a lot of water that seems to be required there. And yeah, I'm just not comfortable that necessarily those two parties will have spoken to each other because they won't necessarily know what the requirements are of each other.
Well, the proposals do include a permanently wet attenuation ponds, which will provide a volume of water. So I would assume, yeah.
So reading the report occasionally explains the report. So there is buried in amongst all of this proposals for 220,000 litre water tanks, which presumably is part of the fire suppression system. So that answers that bit. The other bit that was raised was the access onto the site and the north-south access. Has that been overcome, and there are multiple access points in the event of anything untoward happening? Because then I think we can get onto the meat of this, which is the green-grey belt distinction.
There was no requirement by county highways for a secondary access.
No, it was requirement by the fire service according to their letter, which has been uploaded. At least 2 separate access points to the site to account for opposite wind conditions direction, bullet point 1 on the second page of the letter of their...
Now, is this the same letter which advises no objection?
It advises no objection subject to condition.
Yes.
And states, additionally, the below criteria must be met. So you're saying that that is achieved?
No.
Okay. I'm slightly perplexed then.
But this is a conditional matter, a matter that the development can't proceed unless that matter has been addressed.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. I think we do need this because we need to go net zero, and I think we need to have something there. I'm a bit dubious regarding the second access and also the Severn Trent communication, and also with the tanks and things like that on site. So at the moment, in principle, I do agree, but I would like to defer this because I think there's unanswered questions we can't answer tonight. We've had details, obviously not in the report, regarding that second letter. And also I think there should be a conversation with the fire brigade again and for the highway second access. So I propose deferment until we get that information, because at the moment, yes, I think we need to go this way. I mean, I've seen it all over Europe and all over the world. This is what we need to do. But I think there's too many grey areas for me to approve it, but not enough to say no to it.
Just checking, Councillor Hamilton, you're asking for a deferment on those specific matters?
Yeah, so on the entrance, to make sure that's correct, the actual information from the fire service and also a conversation between the fire service and Severn Trent, and they can provide that water without causing any issues within the surrounding villages. So I think personally, we haven't got that information. I think it's deferment until we get that. So I will propose that if anyone wants to second it.
Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
You seconded, Councillor Becker, or you?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm quite happy to have it seconded, because to second deferment to try and get clarification on this, because I'm looking at one document that says one thing and another document that says another thing, and I'm just slightly concerned that there's been a miscommunication between ourselves, Warwickshire Fire and Rescue, the applicant, whatever, because we seem to be saying in respect of BESS sites, there needs to be at least 2 separate access points, but they've also come back with no objection to a site that only has 1 access point, and that's a little bit perplexing to myself. So I think if we can get that clarified and then come back and deal with it.
Take a vote now on whether members wish to defer to the next meeting on those specific points.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have my hand up for about half a minute. Okay. I wish to speak to add to this part of this debate, if that's possible. Are we okay with that? Can I
are you
I want to
supporting or rejecting?
I am supporting what's been proposed, but I want to add something else, which is vitally important.
Right.
And that is the access. I wanted to see the drawing of the access, because we know that the applicant is not the owner of the access. And the owner of the access does not want his drive altering. And that was put in the letter to Georgina Isherwood.
So go forward with an application without actually owning the access or access over land.
Yeah. As far as we're on the plan shown to us, it's land within the highway. Are you disputing that?
As the ward councillor, I was drawn into a concern by the occupant of the bungalow. And that was what he told me some time ago, that he and his wife are part owners of the access. Not the land at the back, which is the applicant's site, it's the access, and he does not want the access altering. So the reason why I wanted to look at the plans is whether the alteration to the site access was on part of his land.
No.
I would point out, if it wasn't part, or it was not material to the application that's before us, then I'm afraid that will have to be in abeyance. If, however, it's on the matters that members have already indicated they want deferment on, then we'll take it on those grounds.
But I think, Chair,
we can't add
you need to establish
information.
Who owns the access.
You know,
you can
Councillor
say no.
Gilius, you've been around long enough.
I do. And that's
to
an
know
important
that
part.
you can't take hearsay as evidence on a planning application if it's not in the report.
This is from his man's own lips and came out on a letter.
Is it in the report?
It isn't in the report, and it should have been.
Yeah, through you, Chair. The plan in front of you there, I understand, is the alterations that are occurring to the actual access. From what I understand is that is all land within the highway, not land owned by the applicant, from what I understand. So that's what we understand is happening at the access point. Obviously, there's further new access is created further within the site, which I believe you were saying is the control of the applicant. So I don't believe this is within, whilst that's not within control of the applicant, it's within land within the highway. That's what I've been informed.
Sorry, Chair, but within the application documentation, there is a proper working drawing, a really blown up scale drawing that you can see that it will determine whose land that alteration is taking place on. If it's on the ownership of the bungalow, he will not allow it.
Okay. I mean, there obviously, as members will be aware, there will be far more detailed plans as part of the application online. Obviously, we can't present them all tonight. And also, there's limited the detail you can actually show. Provided the correct notice has been served, then obviously people can apply for planning permission on other people's land and can receive planning permission. If there's a separate issue with regard to this access, then obviously that's something that we obviously will have addressed as part of this report. But as far as I'm aware, then in terms of the access arrangements, I'm led to believe that the main changes are obviously to do with this. The cross section, I'm assuming, is that further into the site?
Can't confirm that.
Okay, fine.
Okay. One proposition before us this evening, and that's deferment for some additional information with regard to water and fire access.
Can we add, Tony, let's get it all done, let's have everything together. So what Tony just said there, can we have all that clarified? So we know everything from state, we know the facts then, and then we can make a decision properly on that. So can we add that, please, to make sure we are doing everything correctly, because that's all we want to do here, don't we?
Councillor Harrington was the original proposer, so if that's what you're proposing, then fine. Obviously, I had Councillor Picker as the seconder. Thank you.
Deferment, please show. Those against? That's unanimous.
Oh, no, it's not. No,
Oh,
it's not.
well, there's
Councillor Thompson.
nearly unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Can we move to application R24/0977? So we've done 4, 3, now it's 2.
No, on 2.
2 and 1.
Yeah, that's right.
7, yeah. Forgive me.
Okay.
Good evening. This is application R240977, located at plot 18, Top Park, Top Road, Barnacle. The scheme is a retrospective planning application for one pitch for gypsy and travel use, including one static caravan, one tourer caravan, one kitchen bathroom outbuilding, a gazebo, gravel hard standing, vehicle access of the access track and pedestrian access of the Top Park access road, including the retention of gates across both accesses and boundary fencing. So this application has been reported to Planning Committee for determination under paragraph 5.23b of the Council's scheme of delegation, owing to the fact that the Chief Officer for Growth and Investment considered that the application should be determined by the local authority on such basis. So regarding the site location and characteristics, access to plot 18 is via the access road on the western side of the Top Park site and to the west of this plot. The plot is currently enclosed on the sides by timber fencing reaching approximately 1.5 metres in height. There is a building on the eastern boundary of the plot serving as a kitchen and bathroom space. There is one static caravan contained within the plot, which is located on the southern boundary. Behind this static caravan is a small gazebo structure. The majority of the plot is surfaced with gravel. So this slide shows an aerial view of the wider Top Park site, with plot 18 highlighted with the red outline. So in terms of the site photos, the top left photo shows a general arrangement within the site. There is a static caravan along with a timber outbuilding on the eastern side. The photo on the right shows the western access road running to the Top Road Highway, and the bottom photo shows the existing static caravan. So regarding the proposal plans, the bottom left photo shows the arrangement within the site, which, as previously mentioned, comprises of a static mobile home on the southern boundary, an amenity building on the eastern boundary, a small gazebo structure behind the mobile home, and then child's play equipment on the other side. And then the other photos show the elevational drawings of the mobile home and then the amenity building on the eastern boundary. So regarding the consultation responses, all technical consultees provided a stance of no objection. The Parish Council offered an objection, along with several neighbouring objections from local residents. The nature of these objections are summarised below and explored in more detail within the officer report. However, these include that the scheme is an inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, detrimental to the appearance of the area. The application fails to demonstrate or provide any evidence of any very special circumstances which could justify any development on a site in the Greenbelt. The development is not sustainable. The development will be clearly visible from the Coventry Way public footpath. The impact of light pollution that the development will have on the area is significant. There is inadequate drainage on the site. There is a significant number of other gypsy and traveller sites in the immediate area and across the wider parish, which has resulted in a significant over-concentration of sites. The works on this site were undertaken with the full knowledge that there was a High Court injunction on this land, which was intended to prevent any such development. So turning to the principle for development, Local Plan Policy GP1 sets out the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The local plan is now more than 5 years old, and paragraph 11D of the NPPF regarding the tilted balance is therefore relevant. Local Plan Policy GP2, the site is located outside of any settlement boundary and upon designated Greenbelt lands. Therefore, paragraph 153 of the NPPF states that when considering any planning application, local planning authorities should ensure that substantial weight is given to any harm to the Greenbelt, including harm to its openness. The proposal does not comply with any of the exception criteria in paragraph 154 of the NPPF, and therefore paragraph 155 is therefore relevant. Turning to paragraph 155, this states that the development of homes and other development in the Greenbelt should not be regarded as inappropriate where the listed criteria applies. As explored in detail in the committee report for members, the scheme is not compliant with all the criteria of paragraph 155 and therefore constitutes inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. As per paragraph 153, inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the Greenbelt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the Greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. So turning to the level of harm caused to the Greenbelt by this scheme, Policy GP2's approach to the Greenbelt development aligns itself with government guidance. The application site is located within an open landscape situated to the north of Coventry. This area of the Warwickshire Greenbelt plays an important purpose in preventing Coventry merging with the settlements to the north. Until June 2028, however, plot 18 would not be viewed in isolation, but would rather be set against the remainder of the Top Park site, as the eastern linear formation of pitches are consented until June 2028. Therefore, the views of the plot on its own accord from the east are limited, as it is screened by the eastern side of the Top Park site during this period. Likewise, from the west, the plot will be set against the wider Top Park site. However, it's accepted that extending the Top Park site above that already consented would cumulatively erode the openness of the Greenbelt and would unacceptably detract from the rural character and appearance of the area. Therefore, the proposal would constitute an encroachment into the countryside, diminishing the sense of separation between Coventry to the south and other settlements to the north. On this basis, the development, if permitted on a permanent basis, will detract from the character and appearance of the area to an unacceptable level, in conflict with local plan policies GP2, NE3 and aspects of DS2. Turning to the local need, the lack of gypsy and traveller accommodation provision across the borough is a key consideration in the determination of this application. The council cannot demonstrate its locally set target for gypsy and traveller provision across the borough. The Rugby GTAA 2025 provides the latest available evidence to identify the accommodation needs for gypsies and travellers across the borough. This latest assessment concluded that there is a minimum requirement of 94 additional gypsy and traveller pitches across Rugby over a period from 2024 to 2042. Of this need, 35 are required in the first 5 years until 2029. Recent decisions have subsequently reduced the council's shortfall of pitch provision during the first period to 26. However, the GTAA 2025 clearly demonstrates the shortfall of provision across the borough. The council is working towards the adoption of a new local plan which seeks to address this need. This emerging document is at an early stage and the relevant policies only carry limited weight in decision making. Therefore, significant weight is attributed to the contribution this proposal would make to addressing a recognised need for more private gypsy and traveller sites at a local level at this current time. So turning to the personal circumstances of the occupants of the plot, evidence of personal circumstances of the current applicants has been received and considered by the LPA. Living on plot 18 of Top Park is the applicant, 2 children, and there are 2 children on site, both are under the age of 10. Both children are in education within the local area. In support of this, the LPA have been provided with letters from educational establishments attended by the children. The applicants and family identify as Romany Gypsies. In line with the above, the applicant has provided sufficient evidence to establish that they will qualify as having gypsy and traveller status for the purposes of assessing planning applications. So turning to matters relating to intentional unauthorised development, a written ministerial statement, August 2015, establishes that intentional unauthorised development is a material consideration to be weighed in the determination of planning applications. An area with a lawful agricultural use in the Greenbelt has seen operational development and a change of use take place. The previous appeal decision for this plot concluded that a proposal on this site is intentional unauthorised development. Government's Plan and Policy Statement of August 2015 states that intentional unauthorised development is a material consideration and should be applied to all applications received after the 31st of August 2015, which is applicable to this case. So turning to the visual impact of the proposal scheme, further intensification of the site will be controlled through conditions 8 and 9 in the draft decision notice, preventing the introduction of any more structures or mobile homes than those which are presently on the plot and is included in the proposed plans. Condition 11 will prevent the installation of excessive or inappropriate additional external light sources. However, whilst it is accepted that the proposal will provide an identified harm of the landscape owing to the cumulative development within the wider Top Park site, the appropriate conditions applied in the draft decision notice on this aspect, and owing to the temporary permission which is proposed, the harm is controlled. The use of appropriate conditions in order to overcome objections or conflicts also conforms with the intentions of paragraph 28 of the Plan and Policy for Traveller Sites 2024. In terms of residential amenity, objections have been received over the cumulative impact of the level of gypsy and traveller accommodation in the locality on local services and facilities. However, the proposal has sufficient privacy and space to meet adequate living conditions arrangements of the applicants without compromising the amenities of those living on adjacent plots within the Top Park site. The nearest settled residential properties to Top Park are around 250 metres away. Environmental Health have stated that a noise assessment is not required for the proposal. Conditions 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 and 11 in the draft decision notice will help restrict immediate implications in the area. So turning to matters relating to highway safety, County Highways raised no objections subject to condition 7 in the draft decision notice in terms of impact on the road network resulting from the proposal. The previous appeal decision for the plot stated that whilst plot 18 was to be served by the Western Access Road, this access road was not included within the red line boundary of the application submission at the time. Therefore, when the appeal was determined, there was not an appropriate access from the plot all the way to the public highway, and in doing so would mean using land where the required consultation hadn't been carried out prior to the determination process. However, in this current application submission before you tonight, the site location plan provided shows the western access road as part of the red line boundary for plot 18, which extends all the way from the plot to the Top Road Highway. This has therefore alleviated the issue relating to access as noted in the appeal decision, and therefore the scheme complies with local plan policies D1 and D2, and the scheme is also in compliance with paragraph 115 of the NPPF. Regarding biodiversity, the local plan states that development will be expected to deliver a net gain for biodiversity and be in accordance with the mitigation hierarchy. This is echoed in the NPPF. The intentional unauthorised development which has been carried out has resulted in a net loss for biodiversity, which is contrary to local plan policy NE1 and the NPPF. However, County Ecology were consulted on this application and provided a stance of no objection. So turning finally to the planning balance, local plan policy GP2, when concerning greenbelt development, states that proposals will only be permitted if they are compliant with national policy. The NPPF states that substantial weight should be given to any harm to the greenbelt. Inappropriate development should not be approved except in very special circumstances, which is echoed in Policy E of the Planning Policy for Traveller Sites. Very special circumstances will not exist unless a development's harm to the greenbelt is clearly outweighed by other considerations. Section 9 of the committee report identified the harm to the greenbelt arising from the application proposal. The harm to the greenbelt is substantial. A net loss for biodiversity has also occurred, which is contrary to local plan policy NE1 and paragraph 187D of the NPPF. This weighs against the scheme. However, the council does not have a 5-year supply of deliverable sites at this time, which carries weight in favour of the application. The new local plan should resolve this current issue. Until then, however, the means of addressing the identified shortfall will be through windfall proposals such as this. The intentional unauthorised development is a factor which weighs against the scheme. However, the proposal provides the applicant and their family with a home within their cultural links, which carries substantial weight in favour of the application. As mentioned, children are present on the site, both of which are under the age of 10, and both attend school in the local area. This also carries substantial weight in favour of the application, as a settled base will benefit them. However, the personal circumstances taken with the identified unmet need at a local level were not considered sufficient to justify the occupancy of Plot 18 on a permanent basis when weighed against the harm identified to the greenbelt and the other conflicts identified. As such, very special circumstances are not demonstrated as to outweigh the harm to the greenbelt for a permanent period. However, turning to a temporary permission to authorise use of Plot 18 until June 2028, it would still be an appropriate development during this period, and this should continue to be afforded substantial weight. However, as the recommendation is one for a temporary period, the cumulative considerations of personal circumstances and the Council's unmet need would outweigh the total harm identified on a temporary basis until June 2028, as the plot will be set against the wider Top Park site for the same time period. Therefore, very special circumstances necessary to justify the development for the time period recommended have been demonstrated. This is noted in the previous appeal decision for the site and is explored in detail in the committee report. The previous matter relating to a suitable access being included in the applicant's red line boundary extending all the way to the Top Road Highway has now been alleviated, and the appeal was dismissed on this technicality for this matter previously. Therefore, suitable and safe access to the Top Road Highway is therefore apparent for a period until June 2028. There has been no other considerations which have arisen since the previous appeal for the plot, which would alter the temporary permission which has been recommended. Therefore, the officer recommendation is that the application is approved on a temporary permission until June 2028, subject to the conditions and informatives as set out on the draft decision notice appended to the report, and the Chief Officer for Growth and Investment being given delegated authority to make minor amendments to the conditions and informatives as outlined in the draft decision notice. Thank you.
If not, I will move to the speakers. No, can I move to the speakers then, please? Can I have Mrs. Emily Temple, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening. Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 states development must be considered in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Plot 18, Top Park, is located in the Greenbelt, where development is inappropriate in principle, though under paragraph 153 of the NPPF, very special circumstances can justify approval. Very special circumstances can be one single material consideration, or they can be accumulation of considerations, and I turn to these now. When the application came to committee in 2023, the long-term general need at the time was 79 pitches. The need now has increased to 94 pitches, and I submit that this general need weighs significantly in favour of the development. Secondly, there are no alternative sites available. The council has a duty of care to provide suitable accommodation for gypsies and travellers under the public sector equality duty. The lack of alternative sites available also weighs significantly in favour of the development. Thirdly, there are personal circumstances, which case law requires the best interests of the children be a primary consideration and given as much weight in favour as the Greenbelt weight against. Plot 18 houses a single mother and 2 children below 10 who are receiving schooling locally. Drainage, ecology, and environmental health matters have been resolved, as have highways matters, with updated plans provided in this application to address the inspector comments in the previous appeal. The application is exempt from biodiversity net gain, as confirmed in the government's national planning guidance. The character and appearance is comparable to the existing Top Park site, which has been granted until 20 of neighbours. The site is not considered to be away from settlements and has good access to the services that are required for day-to-day living and schooling. No commercial activities are proposed, and mitigation is available through planning conditions which are agreed. Plots 14, 15 and 16 have also been granted on a temporary basis, and this too is a material factor weighing in favour of the application. In summary then, very special circumstances exist. This application gives members the chance to regularise the development. A permanent permission is requested in the first instance, though I do note the committee report recommends a temporary consent. And if members are minded to grant this to match the existing Top Park site adjacent. I hope this information is helpful and the application can be approved. Thank you.
Councillor Becky Mordis.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, my ward is facing inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and once again, planning policy is being stretched and manipulated to try and justify it. The site is Greenbelt land. It fails the sustainability test in every aspect, and even the officer's report accepts that it is heavily car dependent, with no safe walking routes and no public transport links. What is most concerning is this site has already been the subject of a planning appeal, and the inspector was absolutely clear that it should be returned to Greenbelt status. That was the direction given. Yet instead of enforcing that decision, time has been allowed to pass, and now we are expected to consider this fresh application with new justifications. If the authority had acted on the inspector's ruling, we would not even be here today and the land would have been reinstated. We must also recognise the cumulative impact. Barnacle is a small rural village, yet it already bears a disproportionate concentration of gypsy and traveller sites. The over-intensification here is eroding the openness of the Greenbelt, damaging the character of the countryside and placing unacceptable pressure on local infrastructure. National planning policy is clear that new sites must not overwhelm the nearest settled community, but that's precisely what is happening. I must also challenge a section of the report that downplays the significance of these applications by suggesting that because there are already 19 plots on Top Park, adding two more won't make a difference. That completely misses the point. It is precisely because there are already so many concentrated here that the cumulative impact has become unacceptable. Each additional pitch further entrenches this over-intensification, further erodes the openness of the Greenbelt, and further alters the rural character of Barnacle. Dismissing new pitches as insignificant simply because there are already many is not sound planning. It's an admission that the situation is already out of balance, and continuing down the path will only make matters worse. We are again told that this proposal is only temporary, but let's be honest, in Barnacle, temporary has always meant permanent. Nothing described as temporary has ever been removed in the last 20 years, and residents have every reason to doubt that this time will be any different. I want to be clear, this is not about blaming the gypsy and traveller community. They have a right to suitable accommodation, and the real failing here lies with the planning system and the lack of proper provision. But bending policy to make unsuitable sites fit the need is not the answer. It fuels tension between the settled and travelling communities and undermines confidence in the planning process. It's time for the authority to take its greenbelt responsibilities seriously. We need to stop entertaining inappropriate development and start working proactively with both communities to identify suitable, sustainable sites that meet the need without destroying the countryside in the process. Unless we change our approach, this farcical cycle will continue indefinitely. For these reasons, I urge members to refuse both planning applications and to uphold the integrity of the greenbelt and the principles of sound planning policy. I don't wish to repeat my speech for the next planning application, so I'd like it to be for both. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm still going to ask you to vacate, I'm afraid, as a ward member. Okay. Okay. You want to?
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. I was going to clarify a point regarding sustainability, which was said in the most recent of the speeches just then. Obviously, sustainability assesses the close proximity of a site to nearby local services and public transport. However, it's important to note for gypsy and traveller sites, the planning policy for traveller sites does not prevent gypsy or traveller sites in rural or semi-rural areas. And the factors relevant to the sustainability of gypsy and traveller sites, as set out in this planning policy for traveller sites, do not mention public transport or distance to shops and services. Instead, the PPTS references that there should be access to appropriate health services, ensure that children can attend school on a regular basis, and provide a settled base that reduces both the need for long-distance travelling. And it was considered that Bulkington has healthcare facilities and a primary school, as well as Wolvie, as well as shops as well and other facilities, and this was less than 1.5 miles from the application site, which was considered acceptable owing to the nature of the proposal.
Just one point on that. In terms of getting the children to school, if those who live on this site arrange their own mode of transport, i.e. they take it in turns to take children to school, is that considered to be adequate and sustainable transport?
I mean, through you, Chair, obviously how private individuals car share would be down to them. The inspectorate in the previous decisions, or more recent decisions, has indicated that, yes, there would be a dominance on the private car, but the inspector also felt that it would be minimal. So, and it was generally considered that this was a sustainable site for the gypsy and traveller community. That, and again, I think partly because of what is in the PPTS. So it is quite specific that this is just focusing on gypsy and traveller community. If obviously individuals chose not to car share, that still would not be a reason to refuse it on sustainability grounds.
Thank you, Richard.
Just another point of clarification, not just for us, but anybody that might be watching. Just a point on the injunctions on land. And I know in the report it states where the land has an injunction on it, that doesn't stop the applying for permission to build on that land. But where that building has taken place after the injunction has been placed, how does the law stand on it then? Because clearly there's been a complete contravention of what's in the report.
I'll hand over to our
Yeah.
So there was an injunction that was set out in 2008, which still applies. Normally, injunctions are for emergency purposes. If there is an injunction in place, there is an expectation that enforcement action will take place and the injunction is complied with. However, that does not prohibit the anyone applying for planning application on that site where the injunction sits. The two are completely separate matters.
Okay, but you didn't quite explain to me the injunction on the land when it's a green field. Building's been done without permission, breaking the injunction rules. you didn't quite explain how you get over that by retrospectively applying for permission for something you've done, knowing full well you've just broken the law.
There would be an expectation that enforcement action would be taken during the period, but that is completely separate from anyone applying for planning permission on a site. So whilst an injunction is in place, it doesn't stop anyone from applying for planning
So
permission.
what we're saying then, the enforcement action was not robust and they should have cleared the site.
That I can't comment on. I'll leave it to my colleagues.
Yeah, no, I can come in on that. Enforcement notices were served, I think within the same month that they went on site. However, they have a right of appeal against those enforcement notices, and of course that is what they then chose to do. It then obviously went into a long period of abeyance with the planning inspectorate. So whilst we as a council acted quickly, unfortunately that wasn't then forthcoming with the planning inspectorate, and then we entered into this cycle of enforcement notice appeals. We then which obviously was dismissed. They then submitted another application, that they appealed that then went to the High Court, and this is obviously the latest round we've got here. The advice that we had at the time from our legal services people was that whilst there were pending applications that were being considered, then it would be ill-advised to pursue separately the injunction prosecution, because those applications were still being considered and the courts may not favour us for doing that. So that is the sort of position we're in, unfortunately.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chair. And I think just a very technical, brief clarification. The existence of an injunction, whilst it doesn't prevent a planning application, is something that members can consider as a material planning consideration when determining the application. I believe that to be correct.
I believe they're two separate processes. So I guess
the enforcement of an injunction would be a separate process, but the existence of the injunction, I believe, is a material consideration that we can consider.
I guess it is material because obviously it runs with the land. So, but obviously the weight that's attached to it, because it's through a separate process, obviously would be limited because obviously what I've just said.
Thank you. At the moment, we have one recommendation from us, from the officer, for a temporary permission till 2028. We'll now go into for the vote. Those in favour of a temporary permission? I've not had any other propositions put forward.
Sorry, I hadn't realised we were in debate.
I think we need debate.
Yeah. Councillor.
Yeah, Chair, I'll move the recommendation as printed.
Recommendation as printed. Is there a second there?
second.
Like it. Right, can we have the debate now then? We have a recommendation, we have a proposer and a seconder.
Well, as you know, Chair, there seems to be a lot of politics going on the television. And I never thought...
Sorry, what's that? Television? I've not watched it.
There seems to be a lot of politics, doesn't there? And one of the things that we talk about is policies. Policies, policies, policies. And yet only last week our Prime Minister said there's got to be more than just policies. There's got to be... Yeah.
Prime Minister doesn't determine planning.
Well, I know, but his statement could. So he suggested that there needs to be a moral aspect to our decision-making. What about that? Moral aspect to it. So when we look at equality, we tend to think of equality that only... We okay? Yeah? All right. So when we think of equality, we tend to think of the ethnic minorities. But equality works in two ways. Equality works to service everybody in our communities.
I'll interject. It's irrelevant to the planning application.
This is part of the officer's
comment that's made. Sorry, Councillor Gilliard.
This is all part of it.
Sorry, Councillor Gilliard. It's irrelevant. He did it at the last planning application on the one we did it. You should not be talking about that aspect of the, diversity and all that, yeah? Stick to the planning application. Sorry.
Well, can I just clarify then, why is it in the officer's report? He's basing his argument on an ethnic direction. And I want to say this works in two different ways. You've got the settled community he's looking after and the ethnic community. We need to look after everybody in our society. But here we tend to be totally disregarding the settled community. We've got a complete accumulation. The accumulative effect of this is devastating on people's livelihoods.
With respect, Councillor Gillies, I take your point on board regarding equality of opportunity, but to say that we are dismissing the views of the local community is, well, it's grossly unfair on what this committee is deciding.
Okay, let me just say that I'm going to move refusal. Green belt and the accumulative effects on the neighbourhood.
Do we have a second?
So I think going back to the planning considerations before us, I think we have an application here which is wholly out of alignment with policy. It breaches paragraph 153 of the MPPF and doesn't meet any of the exceptions laid out in the subsequent paragraphs. It's contrary to our own local development scheme. It's a site that's been refused on previous occasions, so on that basis I would support the motion for refusal that Councillor Gillies has, I think, wandered towards. Inappropriate development in the green belt, contrary to the MPPF and GP2, I believe.
Chair, through you, can I suggest that we continue with the debate and members may have an opportunity to speak, and once that concludes there should be a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation and a vote taken on that. If that falls, then it's not passed. If there is a majority in favour of the recommendation, then that will be approved. So there's no need to have an additional amendment at this point. We need to conclude the debate.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other speakers?
Sorry, Chair.
I said any other speakers.
It's important that our rural councillors understand what goes on our urban councillors understand what's going on in the rural areas. They've probably never even visited some of these areas, never seen any of this, never spoken to any people. So
that is not fair. That is not fair. He's sat in the chair before, making that kind of accusation.
Let me just give you just one example.
Chair, he did it at the last meeting, similar comment. They are racist.
They're not racist in the slightest. Now, come on. Yeah.
Whose movements you do not know.
Let me just give you one example.
No.
Please, just one example of unauthorised development taking place.
I'm moving on to other speakers, please.
So you're closing me down?
Yes, I am.
Right, okay, fine.
Councillor Edwards.
From my perspective, this is a really difficult decision because I have every sympathy with the gypsy community that they would like their lifestyle to live it as they would like, but equally there is this issue of the green belt and the impact it will have on the local community. So I'm very torn about what to do in this scenario, and I'll just continue to listen to what others say.
Any other speakers? No. Then we'll move to the votes. Now, those in favour of the recommendation as printed and the addendum, please show. Okay. Those against? 2, 3, 4. So it's carried. And 1 abstention. Right. So that's approved. Right. Now can we move to application 24/0976? And can I ask the officer to start his presentation?
So this is application R240976, located at plot 17, Top Park, Top Road, Barnacle. The scheme is retrospective planning application for 1 pitch for gypsy and traveller use, including 1 tourer, the siting of 2 mobile homes, a storage building, gravel hard standing, a paved patio, 2 amenity buildings, vehicle access of the access road and pedestrian access of the Top Park access road, together with retention of gates across both accesses and boundary fencing. So as per the previous application, this application being reported to Planning Committee for determination owing to the fact that the Chief Officer for Growth and Investment considered that the application should be determined by the local authority on such basis. So in terms of site location and characteristics, access to plot 17 is via the access road on the western side of the Top Park site and to the west of the plot. The plot is currently enclosed on the sides by timber fencing reaching approximately 1.5 metres in height. There are 2 buildings on the eastern boundary of the plot serving as a kitchen and utility space. There is a storage building on the northern boundary of the plot. The majority of the plot is surfaced with gravel, and there are 2 static mobile home structures contained within the plot. So the slides shows an aerial view of the wider Top Park site with plot 17 highlighted with the red outline. So in terms of site photos, the top left photo shows the general arrangement within the site. There's a static caravan along with a tourer caravan on the southern boundary, and the edge of one of the amenity buildings is also on the photo. The bottom left photo shows a view of the northern boundary of the site, including the other amenity building on the right side of the photo. And the photo on the right-hand side of the slide shows the western access road running to Top Road Highway. So in terms of the proposal plans, the bottom left shows the general arrangement within the site, which comprises of 2 static mobile homes, 2 amenity buildings on the eastern boundary, a storage building in the northwestern corner, and a tourer caravan. The remainder of the photos on this slide illustrate the nature of the elevational plans of the mobile homes and then the outbuildings as well. So regarding consultation responses, all technical consultees provided a stance of no objection. The Parish Council offered an objection along with several neighbouring objections from local residents. The nature of these objections is summarised below and on the slide and explored in more detail in the officer report. These are inappropriate development in the greenbelt, detrimental to the appearance of the area. The application fails to demonstrate or provide any evidence of very special circumstances to justify the development on the site. The development is not sustainable. The development will be clearly visible from a local public footpath. The impact of the light pollution that the development will have on the area is significant. There is inadequate drainage on this site. There is a significant number of other gypsy and traveller sites in the immediate area and across the wider parish, which has resulted in a significant overconcentration of sites. The works on this site were undertaken with the full knowledge that there was a High Court injunction on this land, which was intended to prevent any such development. So regarding principle of development, local plan policy GP1 sets out the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The local plan is now more than 5 years old, and therefore paragraph 11D, the tilted balance, is therefore relevant. Local plan policy GP2, the site is outside of the settlement boundary and upon designated greenbelt lands. Paragraph 153 of the MPPF states that we're considering any planning application, local planning authorities should ensure that substantial weight is given to any harm to the greenbelt, including harm to its openness. The proposal does not comply with any of the exception criteria as outlined in paragraph 154 of the MPPF, and therefore paragraph 155 is relevant. Turning to paragraph 155, this states that development of homes and other development in the greenbelt should not be regarded as inappropriate where the listed criteria applies. As explored in detail within the committee report, for members, the scheme is not compliant with all the criteria of paragraph 155 and therefore constitutes inappropriate development in the greenbelt. As per paragraph 153 of the MPPF, inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the greenbelt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. So in terms of the greenbelt harm caused by the proposal scheme, Policy GP2's approach to the greenbelt development aligns itself with government guidance. The application site is located within an open landscape situated to the north of Coventry. This area of the Warwickshire Greenbelt plays an important purpose in preventing Coventry merging with the settlements to the north. Until June 2028, however, Plot 17 would not be viewed in isolation, but would rather be set against the remainder of the Top Park site, as the eastern linear formation of pitches are consented until June 2028. Therefore, views of the plot on its own accord from the east are limited, as they are screened by the eastern side of Top Park site during this period. Likewise, from the west, the plot will be set against the wider site. However, it is accepted that extending the Top Park site above that already consented would cumulatively erode the openness of the greenbelt and would unacceptably detract from the rural character and appearance of the area. Therefore, the proposal will constitute an encroachment into the countryside, diminishing the sense of separation between Coventry to the south and other settlements to the north. On this basis, the development, if permitted on a permanent basis, would detract from the character and appearance of the area to an unacceptable level, in conflict with policies GP2, NE3 of the local plan, and aspects of policy DS2. So again, touching on the local need of the borough, this is a key consideration in the determination of this application. The council cannot demonstrate its locally set target for gypsy and traveller provision across the borough. The Rugby GTAA 2025 provides the latest available evidence to identify the accommodation needs of gypsies and travellers across the borough. The latest assessment concluded that there are a minimum requirements of 94 additional gypsy and traveller pitches across the borough over the period of 2024 to 2042. Of this need, 35 are required in the first 5 years until 2029. Recent decisions have subsequently reduced the council's shortfall of pitch provision during the first period to 26. Therefore, the GTAA 2025 clearly demonstrates the shortfall of provision across the borough at this time. The council is working towards the adoption of a new local plan which seeks to address this need. This emerging document, however, is at an early stage and the relevant policies only carry limited weight in decision-making. Therefore, significant weight is attributed to the contribution this proposal would make to addressing a recognised need for more private gypsy and traveller sites at a local level at this current time. Turning to the personal circumstances of the occupants of the plot, evidence of the personal circumstances have been received and considered by the LPA. Living on plot 17 is the applicant, their partner, the applicant's children and their families also reside within the plot. There are 5 children on site, 4 of which are under the age of 10. 3 of the children are in education within the local area, 2 of which are at a local primary school and the third attends a local nursery. In support of this, the LPA have been provided with letters from educational establishments attended by the children. The applicant and the family identify as Romany gypsies, and in line with the above, the applicant has provided sufficient evidence to establish they will qualify as having gypsy and traveller status for the purposes of assessing planning applications. So turning to matters related to intentional unauthorised development, a written ministerial statement, August 2015, establishes that intentional unauthorised development is a material consideration to be weighed in the determination of planning applications. An area with a lawful agricultural use in the Greenbelt has seen operational development and a change of use take place. The previous appeal decision for this plot concluded that the proposal on the site is intentional unauthorised development. Government's planning policy statement, August 2015, states that intentional unauthorised development is a material consideration and should be applied to all applications received after the 31st of August 2015. So turning to the visual impact of the proposal scheme, further intensification of the site will be controlled through conditions 8 and 9 in the draft decision notice, preventing the introduction of any more structures or mobile homes than those which are presently on the plot. Condition 11 will prevent the installation of excessive or inappropriate external light sources. Whilst it is accepted the proposal will provide an identified harm of the landscape owing to the cumulative development within the wider Top Park site, the appropriate conditions applied within the draft decision notice, and owing to the temporary permission which is proposed, the harm is controlled. The use of appropriate conditions in order to overcome objections or conflicts also conforms with the intentions of paragraph 28 of the Planning Policy for Traveller Sites 2024. Turning to residential amenity, objections have been received over the cumulative impact of the level of gypsy and traveller accommodation in the locality on local services and facilities. The proposal in its own right has sufficient privacy and space to meet adequate living arrangements for the applicants without compromising the amenities of those living on adjacent plots on Top Park. The nearest settled residential properties to the Top Park site are around 250 metres away. Environmental Health have stated that a noise assessment is not required for the proposal, and conditions 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 and 11 in the draft decision notice will help to restrict amenity implications on the wider area. Turning to matters related to highway safety, County Highways raised no objections subject to condition 7 in terms of impact on the road network resulting from the proposal. The previous appeal decision for the plot stated that whilst plot 17 was to be served by the Western Access Road, it was not included in the red line boundary of the application submission at the time. Therefore, there was not an appropriate access from the plot all the way to the public highway, and in doing so would mean using land where the required consultation hadn't been carried out prior to the determination process. In this current application submission, the site location plan provided includes the Western Access Road as part of the red line boundary for plot 17, and this extends all the way from the plot to the Top Road Highway. This has therefore alleviated the issue relating to access as noted in the appeal decision previously. The scheme therefore complies with local plan policies D1 and D2. The scheme is also in compliance with paragraph 115 of the NPPF. In terms of biodiversity, the local plan policy NE1 states that development will be expected to deliver a net gain in biodiversity and be in accordance with the mitigation hierarchy. The intentional unauthorised development which has been carried out has resulted in a net loss for biodiversity, which is contrary to local plan policy NE1 and paragraph 187D of the NPPF. County Ecology were consulted on this application and provided a stance of no objection. So finally, turning to the planning balance, local plan policy GP2, when concerning greenbelt development, states that proposals will only be permitted if they are compliant with national policy. The NPPF states that substantial weight should be given to any harm to the greenbelt. Inappropriate development should not be approved except in very special circumstances, which is also echoed in Policy E of the Planning Policy for Traveller Sites 2024. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the development's harm to the greenbelt is clearly outweighed by other considerations. Section 9 of the committee report identified the harm to the greenbelt arising from the application proposal. The harm to the greenbelt is substantial. A net loss of biodiversity has also occurred. However, the Council does not have a 5-year supply of deliverable sites at this time, which carries weight in favour of the application. The new local plan hopefully should resolve this current issue. Until then, however, the means of addressing the identified shortfall will be through windfall proposals. The intentional unauthorised development is a factor which weighs against the scheme. However, this proposal provides the applicant and their family with a home within their cultural links, which carries substantial weight in favour of the application. As mentioned previously, there are children present on site, 4 of which are under the age of 10. 3 of the children attend school in the local area. This carries substantial weight in favour of the application, as a settled base will benefit them. However, the personal circumstances taken with the identified unmet need at a local level are not sufficient to justify the occupancy of plot 17 on a permanent basis when weighed against the harm identified to the greenbelt and the other conflicts identified. As such, very special circumstances are not demonstrated to outweigh the harm to the greenbelt for a permanent period. Turning to a temporary permission to authorise use of plot 17 until June 2028. It would still be an appropriate development during this period, and they should continue to be afforded substantial weight. However, as the recommendation is one for a temporary period, the cumulative considerations of personal circumstances and the Council's unmet need would outweigh the total harm identified on a temporary basis until June 2028, as the plot will be set against the wider Top Park site for the same time period. Therefore, very special circumstances necessary to justify the development for the time period recommended have been demonstrated. This is noted in the previous appeal decision for the site and is explored in detail in the committee report. The previous matter relating to a suitable access being included in the applicant's red line boundary, extending all the way to the Top Road Highway, has also now been alleviated, and the appeal was dismissed on a technicality for this matter previously. A suitable and safe access to the Top Road Highway is therefore apparent for a period until June 2028. There has been no other considerations which have arisen since the previous appeal for the plot, which would alter the temporary permission, which is recommended tonight. And therefore, application R240976 be approved on a temporary permission until June 2028, subject to the conditions and informatives set out in the draft decision notice, and the Chief Officer for Growth and Investment being given delegated authority to make minor amendments to the conditions and informatives as outlined in the draft decision notice. Thank you.
No? Right. into debate. Oh, sorry, Emily. I forgot you were still there.
It's all right, Chairman. Thank you. I won't repeat all my comments in full previously made. I think they can be taken as read and transferable. But I did just, in addition to the general need and lack of available sites, just want to reiterate the personal circumstances. Plot 17 houses a family with 6 adults and 5 children, 4 of whom are under 10, and all of whom would be homeless without this site. Also, just to draw attention to the officer's comments in the presentation about the application wholly addressing the inspector's comments in the appeal, which was simply for the red line to be able to provide an access up to Top Road, which has been provided and agreed by Highways. And then a final comment just about the emerging local plan, which, as is listed, carries very limited weight at this stage. And whilst expected to be adopted by 2028, policy timetables do regularly slip. And furthermore, it's not expected that the sites would actually be available and deliverable by that time of adoption. They still need to be proposed, submitted, approved and implemented. So once again, we would ask for a permanent consent in the first instance, or a temporary consent to match the others, which now includes plot 18 that has just been granted and also becomes a material consideration. Thank you.
Into debate, members. Is there somebody who wants to start? Councillor Jill Simpson, please.
This is the 5th one we've had, I think, of these over the last 2 planning committees. I think one of the things that strikes me when you look at the photos is actually all of the sites are very neat. They're very well kept. The grass is neat, and so they look very nice. My problem is they're in the wrong place. They're still on the green belt. The papers don't, the applications are for temporary. And so we're sort of almost having a fudge of like, there's not enough to make it permanent. We can't do it as permanent. But the weight of the green belt, which I think is quite a strong, especially as these sites are between Coventry and Rugby, kind of gets watered down with the special circumstances. So it's then how much weight we put, and that's a decision we all have to make, how much weight we put on the sites being in the wrong place. And they're always retrospective. I know we're allowed to take retrospective, but it's frustrating. And this one has obviously been going on for a very long time and still isn't permanent. Yeah, everybody's going to make their own personal decisions on this one. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. I'm going to move refusal on inappropriate development in the Greenbelt.
Chair, I'll move proposal as outlined by the officers in the report. Thank you.
I seconded that one again.
I will shockingly second Councillor Simpson-Vince for all the reasons she has eloquently set out.
Yeah. As we have, the formal report has been moved and seconded, so I think we have to vote on that one first, and then come back to any amendments thereafter. So, all those in favour of the report as printed, plus any addendums that the officers added. Okay, those against. What's going on?
No abstentions.
Is there any abstention? And one abstention. So it's carried.
Yeah.
So that's actually been approved. Thank you, Frank. Have we had any requests for site visits?
No, through you, Chair, we've had no more.
Right, thank you. Footpath diversion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As members may recall from other committees where we have a footpath that is diverted as part of a planning application, then it will come to this planning committee to be confirmed. So in connection with this particular application, we have a diversion of part of a footpath R235 on land known as Dipbar Fields, Daventry Road in Dunchurch. The footpath in question lies to the south-east of Dunchurch itself, just off the A45, as was. That's the footpath in question there highlighted in yellow, and this is an aerial view of the actual site. Following the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement, outline planning permission was granted in July 2016 for 86 dwellings, with an associated access off the A45 M45 roundabout. The housing scheme in front of you there, it actually relates then to the subsequent Reserve Matters application, which was approved in June 2023. The footpath basically ran, I'll put my laser pen on, sort of cut along the edge here, down to the roundabout, and the proposal, which I'll show you in the next slide, is to actually take it now through the actual housing estate layout. So this shows here the solid black line is the line of the current footpath, and the proposal is to run it along the dotted line. So part of the development requires it through the northern eastern parts of the site, which is now currently being developed by Charles Church, which is a division of Persimmon Homes. So on the 2nd of July of this year, an order under the provisions of Section 257 of the Town and Country Planning Act was made and advertised. The effect of the order is to stop up part of the footpath R235 and create a replacement footpath as shown on the attached plan and described in the attached order. No objections have been received, and committee are therefore asked to confirm the public path order unopposed. Thank you, Chair.
Last chance. Okay. Councillor Nistor.
I will move the recommendation.
You move the recommendation. Are both of you seconding it, or one of you?
Chair, only if I'm allowed to speak, I'll second it.
Right. All those in favour of the application, please show. Thank you. And guess what? Delegated decisions.
Noted.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time this evening. I appreciate they're quite complicated and quite lengthy applications, but we want to ensure that they were legally binding. We've had to do them in that way. No, because the last time we took them on block, it didn't really work.